Study Session 4, Industrial Sector, Introduction. In this study session, you will look into what constitutes the industrialization policy in Nigeria, the objective of the industrial policies, forms of industrialization, and the contributions of the sector to the development of the Nigerian economy. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to 1. Present the objectives of industrial policy and incentive structure in Nigeria. 2. Outline the roles and contributions of the manufacturing sector to the Nigerian economy. 3. Highlight the forms of industrialization strategies that have been adopted in Nigeria. What is industrialization? There is no precise definition of industrialization. It is conceived differently by different authors. According to Clark 1998, industrialization is the process of setting up such organizations, especially in the introduction of manufacturing industry in countries and regions where people are engaged mainly in agricultural activities. ECO203SS4 conceives industrialization as a process of transforming raw materials with the aid of human resources and capital goods into A. Consumer goods, B. New capital goods, which allow more consumer goods to be produced with the same human resources, and C. Social overhead capital, which together with human resources provides new services to both individuals and businesses. Also, Suchilif suggested that the country is industrialized when the following 3 criteria are simultaneously satisfied. 1. When at least 1/4 of GDP of the country is produced in the industrial sector. 2. When about 2/3 of industrial output arises in the manufacturing sector of the industrial sector. And 3. When at least 1/10 of its total population is employed in the industrial sector. Industrialization and the Nigerian economy. The major difference in the status of developing and developing countries is in the area of the level of development of their industrial sectors. Recognizing this fact, the Nigerian government stimulates the need to develop the sector by formulating policies that will enhance the sector's development. Objectives of industrial policies in Nigeria. 1. Ensuring rapid expansion and diversification of industrial sector of the economy. 2. Increasing income realized from the industrial activities. 3. Creation of more employment opportunities. 4. Promoting even development and fair distribution of industries in all parts of the country. 5. Raising the level of intermediate and capital goods production. 6. Promoting indigenous manpower development in the industrial sector. 7. Raising the proportion of indigenous ownership in aggregate industrial investment in the country, among other things. Industrial incentives. In pursuit of the above stated objectives, the government over the years has experimented with different incentives. The following are some of the incentives which have been provided for industrial investors in Nigeria. 1. Tax holidays. An industry that is granted a pioneer status enjoys a tax holiday for a period of time. 2. Import duty relief. Under this scheme, Manufacturing industries are allowed to import criteria raw materials either from import duty or at a very low concessional duty rate. 3. Depreciation allowances. Investors are encouraged and assisted through accelerated depreciation of capital investment, which provides for a rapid write-down on capital assets. 4. Prohibition of dumping and subsidized goods. Manufacturing industries are protected from dumped and subsidized goods from abroad. 5. Granting tax relief of up to 120% of expenses on companies' research and development, provided such research and development activities are carried out in Nigeria. 6. Providing export development fund to assist companies to cover parts of their export promotion activities. 7. Giving export expansion grant to exporters who have exported a minimum of 500,000 worth of fully produced and semi-finished products, including solid minerals. 8. Rehabilitating and expanding existing infrastructure, that is, electricity, telecommunication, roads, and water supply. 9. Establishing Bank of Industry Limited to assist resuscitating ailing industries and promoting new ones. 10. Banning the importation of some products that can be manufactured locally, such as rubber, plastics, footwear, leather, textile, and so on. Forms of industrialization strategies. There are basically two forms of industrialization strategies, namely import substitution industrialization strategy. This is also referred to as inward orientation. It is a policy which, in principle, is adopted to develop industrial capacity and emphasize on domestic production of what is hitherto imported. 2. Export promotion strategy. This is also known as outward orientation strategy. It is a policy that encourages production of export and at the same time it raises the bias of incentives towards the production of import substitutes. Manufacturing. This is a major subsector of industries for any economy in the world. It plays crucial roles which include importance of manufacturing sector to the economy. Number 1, it creates avenue for employment opportunities. 2, it helps to boost primary production, particularly agriculture. 3, it makes for forward and backward intersectoral linkages in the economy. 4, it helps in diversifying the economy. 5, it helps in increasing foreign exchange earnings. 6, it helps and enables local labor to acquire skills. 7, it minimizes the risk of overdependence on foreign goods and facilitates the fullest exploitation and utilization of available resources. The contributions of the manufacturing sector to the Nigerian economy can be assessed using the following. 1. Contributions of manufacturing sector to GDP. The contribution of the manufacturing sector to the overall output of the economy, that is GDP, has been substantial over time. It was little above 7% in 1970 and declined to 5.6% in 1975 and 1980 respectively. It stood and reached a peak of about 11% in 1985. However, It fell to about 8.9% in 1990 and to about 6% in late 1990s and 2000. Similarly, the contribution of the sector to the total export is nothing to reckon with. The share in 1970 fell to 1.1% in 1975. It was less than 1% in the 80s and 90s, except in 1998 when it was 1.7%. 2. Composition of the sector. The sector is composed of A. Consumer goods industry. These are industries that are producing consumables like soap, sugar, bread, and so on. B. Intermediate goods industry. The output of this industry is an input to other manufacturing industries, e.g. cement, tire, paint, and so on. C. Capital goods industry. They are industries that are producing heavy machines which further assist in production process, e.g. cars, machinery, plants, and so on. Ownership structure. A. Foreign industries. B. Nigerian manufacturing industries. Average ownership structure of the Nigerian manufacturing sector is 52.4% for Nigeria and 47.6% for the foreign industries. But the irony of it is that the foreigners have the higher share in the manufacturing sector because they decide what happens. Percentage share of manufacturing in GDP and export structure in Nigeria. 1970, share of GDP was 7.2%, share of total export 7.4. 1975, share of GDP was 5.6, share in total export 1.1%. 1980, share of GDP was 5.4%, share in total export 0.28%. 1985, share of GDP was 10.7 and share in total export was 0.52%. 1990, share in GDP was 8.1% and in total export was 0.51%. In 1995, share in GDP stood at 6.8% and share in total export was 0.7%. In 1996, share in GDP was 6.5% and share in total export was 0.4%. In 1997, share in GDP was 6.3 and share in total export was 0.7. In 1998, the share in GDP stood at 5.93% and share in total export was 1.7%. In 1999, share in GDP stood at 5.96% and share in total export 1.7%. In year 2000, share in GDP stood at 5.95. In 2001, share in GDP stood at 5.96%. In 2002 and 2003, it stood at 4.61 and 4.42% respectively. Source: Federal Office of Statistics and CBN. Number 4. Contribution to employment. The contribution of manufacturing sector to the structure of employment in Nigeria leaves much to be desired. Table 4.4 shows the number of people employed in the manufacturing sector from 1970 to 1992. It can be observed that the number of people employed in this subsector increased in 1975 when compared to 1970 level. This is evident from the index of the number of people employed, which rose from 28.4% in 1970 to 53.8% in 1975. As from 1982, the rate of employment in the sector dwindled. This trend continues to the present time. Summary. From the foregoing, we could note that industrialization does not have a particular definition. Hence, it has been defined in various ways by researchers. One of such definitions sees industrialization as a process of transforming raw materials with the aid of human resources and capital goods into A. Consumer goods, B. New capital goods, which allow more consumer goods to be produced with the same human resources, and C. Social overhead capital, which together with human resources provides these services to both individuals and businesses. We consequently highlighted the industrial policy objective in Nigeria to encourage more industries to be cited is to give them some incentives, which include, among others, tax holiday, import duty relief, depreciation allowance, prohibition of dumped and subsidized goods, and banning the importation of some products that can be manufactured locally, like rubber, plastic, footwear, leather, textile, and so on. This is the end of study session 4. Thanks for listening.